My name is Tim Ezell, and I've been sober for 27 years. The first time was I took some out of my sister's back seat. And it was more just like that was just the novelty of it, just kind of like the experimentation. But the next time, not too much longer, I remember it was the summer before my freshman year of high school. And I had a whole fifth of whiskey and drank the whole thing. And that night, woke up with a big yellow bruise on my forehead, didn't remember anything. I blacked out, which became a pattern for me throughout my time of drinking. But it was just, from day one, I was full on. There was never in my entire time that I was drinking, there was never a social drink for me. My parents had just divorced. My father moved out of the house. I had just finished middle school, was starting high school. And, my father was the spiritual anchor in the house. And when he left out and when things went south, I thought, you know what? God, I'm going to do this on my own terms now. I'm going to walk my own path. This way didn't work. I believed that this was supposed to be how it was going to go. My family was going to be together. And when that didn't happen, I decided to try things my own terms. When I go back to reunions now, from my high school reunions, invariably someone comes up to me and goes, "Man, I can't believe you survived high school." And the same could be said in college. It was a regular thing for me to wake up in places where I didn't know how I'd gotten there. My car was out front. I didn't remember driving. I was with strange people that I didn't know, wondering how I got there. So that was a regular thing for me. Waking up in fear of answering the phone because someone's going to call and tell me what I did the night before, because I had no recollection of it. That was a regular routine thing for me. And it used to make me mad even when I'd see somebody like would go in a 7-Eleven and they'd buy like one beer. I'm like, what's the point? Because that wasn't the point for me. The point was always to medicate. The point was always to escape. I was also doing anything I could to get it, right? When I was in high school, I'd have my sister's boyfriends buy it for me, or we'd park outside the stores until we could get someone to buy alcohol for us. Or when I was in college, high school even, I trained myself to where I wouldn't have to go to the bathroom, because if I had to go to the bathroom, then I'm missing out on drinking what was there and someone else was going to get ahead of me. That's the thinking I had. I'm like, man, if I just stop having to go to the bathroom, then I can get more out of this 12-pack than they're going to get out of this 12-pack. That's the thinking I had. I was the guy that would go to the restaurant where they'd say, there was a restaurant in Baton Rouge where their big drink was the zombie, and they're like, you can only have 2, and I'd find a way to get to another waitress where I could have 3 or 4. That kind of mentality of anything whatever it took to get it. Paying for the mat shot when the bar closes. Like, how much for everything that's on the mat, that you've been mixing all night? I'll give you $2 for that. But I think I knew I was on a bad path. But I didn't care. High functioning is a good way of saying it. I just didn't have that deep bottom that I hit to really jar me until one night in 1991. I woke up in another strange place with strange people. Didn't know how I got there. My car was out front, and I just had this sense of I just can't go on living like this. I couldn't imagine living my life with or without alcohol at that point. And I had blacked out once again, and I just got up, left where I was, and went to a payphone and called my uncle. And it was my Uncle Andy, who had always been the uncle I visited in Baton Rouge. We were really tight. He had moved to California, was an attorney there, went through a divorce himself, and had just moved back to Baton Rouge when I hit my bottom. And I called him, and he had 2 years sobriety, and I called him and I said, man, I don't know what to do. And he took me to a meeting the next day to start the process of exploring that. And I realized, it's at that point that I realized I am an alcoholic. I knew I didn't have any control over it. I was just maybe not even a year sober, a little less than a year. And I was living in New Orleans working for a high school football show. And we were celebrating our first episode, and the station had this party, and I go there, and at that time I didn't tell anyone. No, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. So there was this one gal from the sales department who was just giving me grief, and a friend of mine who also wasn't drinking all night. Why, here, try to drink this? I'm like, no, I don't want anything. So then halfway through the night, she sends us over 2 Shirley Temples. Here you go, kids. Here's your drinks. I tip it up. It's straight vodka. And I'm like, boom. I just freaked out. And I went and told my friend TJ, I'm like, we got to go. And he's like, well, what happened? I'm like, we just need to go. And I went right home, and I called my uncle. I'm like, man, I blew it. I've blown it. And I took a drink. And he goes, well, did you mean to? I'm like, no. And he said, well, then, man, you put it right down, right? I'm like, yeah, I did. He goes, well, you're good. But from that point on, I'm like, look, I'm going to let people know my situation. And they'll either, 1, respect it, or 2, they'll think I'm some kind of freak. But either way, they're going to leave me alone. And so that's when I was like, I'm just going to let people know this is where I am. This is what I struggle with. And how they deal with it is their own problem. But I have no problem being upfront with it. And I understand there's some people who do protect that anonymity, and I think that's great. But for me, that's when I said, all cards on the table. This is who I am, like it or lump it.